All right, guys, let's get started. So, hello everyone, and welcome to part two of our POV Beyond the Degree series, creating community and culture over clout. My name is Imani Evora, and I'll be serving as your moderator today. And I'm also the founder of We Are Made. We're a community and resource for next gen dreamers, creatives, and entrepreneurs. And we're here to help you take the first steps towards the life and career you actually want. So, whether you're creating space for others or searching for one that celebrates who you are, you're in the right place today. And for the next hour, we will dive in deep to make sure that you guys can move forward with creating a community that values impact over influence. And to close us out, we will be graced with a masterclass going deeper into what it takes to build a community to scale with artist and grown media founder Kaya Nova. So, joining us today are incredible panelists who truly understand what it takes to not only build a community, but to sustain one. Up first, we have Joy Brown, who is the founder and CEO of the Culture Creators. And this platform is dedicated to uplifting and connecting the next generation of diverse talent. And through her work, Joy has built bridges between cultural trailblazers and rising creatives, helping shape a more inclusive and inspiring industry. With years of experience leading marketing and partnerships at Atlantic Records and ICM Partners, she knows what it takes to turn purpose into real impact. And we're so happy to have her here with us today. Welcome, Joy, to POV.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
All right. And last but not least, we have Michael Oloyede, a Nigerian American actor and community builder whose work continues to bridge culture, creativity, and connection. And as a founding member, of the Creative Collective NYC, CultureCon, and The Layout, Michael has helped shape spaces that celebrate and amplify diverse voices from the beginning. And he is continuing this mission through his newest community, Seen and Heard. It's an initiative for creatives to foster connection while also bringing their visions to life through support at every stage of their creative journey. Welcome, Michael.
Thank you, thank you, thank you. It's good to be here today.
So today's conversation is so incredibly pivotal, right? And I'm excited for our listeners to join in for the time to explore together what we can do, how we can grow, and what steps to take next to make sure we can continue to build community with purpose. So I want to start here. If we can kick off with the 60-second origin, where you share with us your earliest career aspirations and where this aspiration actually started. I'm going to start with you, Joy.
Hi. First of all, thank you for putting this together, Monty. I think this is so powerful. I won't bore you guys, but I've always been a lover of music and the arts, and my inspiration started at Howard University. And then I ended up moving to New York without a job and just using my network to kind of get my foot in the door. And years later, through that network and through my peers, I've been able to navigate the entertainment business.
And Michael?
And for me, in addition to, finding joy in building community, I'm also a performing artist. I'm an actor. So for me, my earliest moment was fourth grade on the stage, in our class musical. If you have, my music teacher made me the lead, and it was at that moment that I knew that this is what I wanted to do. And yeah, from there, I've been able to find community within the artist space and so many other spaces.
I love that. I always like to start with original aspirations because our plans have changed. And let's be honest, like when you're in school, we probably weren't introduced to being or having access to becoming a community builder. So to see you guys both transition your careers into having communities of your own, I always love to see how we got there.
Yeah.
So, originally, the purpose of community growing up, as well as I experienced it, was once a safe haven for people to collect and connect. And we saw these spaces growing up, whether it was in churches or sports or even like sororities and fraternities. And community was made for us to be in a space we can organize safely and organically. Um, Yet during this time, we find ourselves more disconnected than ever. And it's unfortunate being that we have so much connection with social media. So, with that being said, where can we go and where do we start to not only find our people, but a space that truly reflects our culture where we don't have to shift? Also, what is the biggest mistakes that you guys notice that many people make that stops them from creating genuine connections?
Hmm.
Yeah. The second part of the question kind of spoke to me because I think, you know, I grew up in Atlanta, I've lived in New York, and now I'm in LA, back and forth between LA and New York, but spent a lot of time in LA. And when I moved here, or when I came here, I found that uh, because everybody is striving for success, everyone's striving for a specific title, a specific role, intention behind connection is sometimes not authentic. And I think the
Mm,
biggest mistake is people strive to connect with the opportunity versus the person.
mm,
And I think every time I am walking into a space, whether it be an event, whether it be a party, whether it be church, whatever it may be, my goal is to connect with the person first. And then whatever comes from that comes from that. But uh, yeah, just I think a mistake people make is they try to connect with what opportunities can be on the other side of this transaction.
Michael, that hit home for me a big time because I think if you lead in with like, how can I get to know this person on a more like, a human level, then can you be my mentor or, can I talk to you about a opportunity? I think you build more authentic connections. And I will say like the success of my like when I was at Atlantic, all the brand deals I did were because of those connections with people who I actually knew I can count. I actually turned, they were friends, from
Mhm.
a point where um, they had value beyond what they could do for me or what I could do for them. And I think that was the beauty of doing business that way is because you know the person you're doing business with, and it's more of a personal touch. And I also think as young people are trying to navigate this new world where, jobs are going away and people being furloughed or what have you, and people are scrambling for a position. I think that they need to think differently about building community. I think we've always we're people who are always in community. If we just have to turn around, open our eyes, and reimagine what that looks like. I think for a long time we've been so self-centered in terms of, just how we approach social media. Everyone's taking 30 seconds to tell what they're doing their day. And when you open that camera up, you can and widen the lens, you see so many other people in your same situation. And so I think it's just a matter of just, just being humble and vulnerable. I think to build community requires a level of vulnerability to say, hey, I don't have this figured out. I don't know what's out there for me. And you will find more connection and more alignment with other people who are going through the same thing by just opening yourself up to a real conversation about what's going on in your life or what's happening in the world.
Yeah. And I'd like to add too, you brought up social media and, I'm a millennial, so I had a time in life where social media wasn't a thing, and then
Hmm.
a time in life where it was. So having both experiences reminds me of how great social media can be as a tool, but
Hmm.
realizing that as a human being, it's not, I don't want to say real, but it isn't real,
Right.
and to remember that as you're using it, like, yeah, I saw my friend's story, but that doesn't mean I know how my friend is doing. Yeah,
Yeah.
we follow each other, but that doesn't mean we're friends. Things like that, it's really important to remember because I think so many emotions and thoughts and ideas are tied to these connections we have that end up not being true. So something to keep in the back of your mind as you're building community, remembering that it's a useful tool to reach people, but it's not always the thing that connects people.
And it shouldn't be the tool. I would say I can't tell you, it drives me crazy. People are like, well, I just DM this person. I mean, that's not the only way to get in touch with people,
Right.
and I really think it's really powerful. One of the things I learned was to go on LinkedIn and they'll show you like if this person's connected to you by the first, second, or third, or fourth degree. And then you figure out if you're not connected directly with them, who else do you know that is connected to them, and then, reach out to them, say, hey, do you mind putting in a good word for with such and such, or can you connect me with such and such? I think those are much more powerful direct connections than sending someone a DM. Not that DMs don't work, because I've DM'd people and it worked because I had no other alternative. But I don't think that people should rely on that. And I really want to say this. I can't tell you how many young people I talk to on a weekly basis who've um can't get an internship. They just started a job and they haven't, they don't have a job anymore. And we're having to go back reminds me, we're having to go back to the old school way of networking, where you pick up the phone or you ask someone to go out to coffee, because people now they're wearing 5 and 6 hats, right? So it's even harder to get in touch with people. And so when we think about building community, I think we have to be strategic, and I think that we have to be mindful about what's happening, right? Michael, you mentioned like social media, not many people tell the whole truth on social media, right? And we don't have enough time a lot of times, right? So everyone's giving you these great, oh, this is happening. I look great. My life is great. And we're not posting like, oh my gosh, I just got laid off, or, we're not giving you the whole story. So I think that we need to keep that in mind, that, like you said, it's part true, but it doesn't tell the whole story of what's happening.
I agree with the aspect of not telling the whole story. And going back to Michael's point, when you see someone's life and you experience them, especially on a daily basis, if this is their career, let's say a content creator, you can feel as if you're a part of their life, whether you talk to them or not. And I think where the disconnect sometimes is we don't check on each other in real life. And we're
Mhm.
depending on these spaces to be the encompass of all the things that we lack, which brings me to the next question. Communities were also born out of an unmet need or desire for more. We can go back to as early as 1966 with the Black Panthers, Panther Party. We can go on and fast forward to 2013 with Black Lives Matter. So many communities are being built because we want more from each other, from the world, and we're putting a lot of pressure on that. I want you guys to think back to the earliest version of the community that you have built for yourself and the audience that you guys both intended to serve. How did you make sure that people not only felt invited to those spaces? It's easy to click a link, but that they also felt seen, especially for those who are still figuring out like where they belong and how to put themselves out there.
For me, going back to CultureCon and the Creative Collective, the Creative Collective was born out of one of my best friends, Imani's apartment. And it started because honestly, there was a night, I think it was a Friday night, there was nothing to do in the city. You go to the club, we just wanted to do something chill. And Imani invited us over, and that became a thing where we were like, oh, we need a space where we can actually connect with like-minded individuals. Fast forward to the layout. It was during the height of the 2020 summer 2020 protest, and we were all protesting and we were all, voicing, fighting for justice, and we didn't have a space to rest in the midst of this. So there was a need for that. And then fast forward to now, what's seen and heard. Um, I think the common thing I was hearing, especially in LA with the film and TV industry, is one, I don't have a space to share my work. And two, every industry event I go to always feels like, there are cliques involved, there's VIP, there's all these things that make me uncomfortable. So the goal was, because there was a need for a space for people to share their work and a need for people to connect in a really authentic way. Um, in all of those environments, I think one thing that we always try and do so people feel seen is, from the time you walk in, we're asking you questions about yourself. We're creating an icebreaker. We're facilitating you meeting someone random, like whether it be a game or some corny, you know, bingo card. I don't know, whatever we can do So as you walk in the space, you feel like, okay, cool. They thought about me specifically, not just the panelists that I'm seeing on stage or the artists that are performing. I'm also a part of this programming. I'm also a part of this event in some kind of way.
Yeah, I love that. Similarly, when I started Culture Creators, I was at Atlantic Records, and I started because again, millennials, seeing things live through Instagram and in an industry that didn't have conferences anymore. So to network across or network up or network down, it was very difficult and challenging. And so I wanted to bring people together because we don't get together as a community often, right? And like Michael talked about with Creative Collective and the layout, like there are not many spaces that are out there for us to all get together. And so I created I didn't know what I was creating. All I knew is that I wanted to bring together people who were behind the scenes driving culture together. Because a lot of times, like myself, we're behind all these great artists and all these great things, but we don't get the recognition. And so people don't know who we are. And not from a sense that we need to be popular, but the sense that people need to know that we exist so they too can be in our place, right? And so I created a party. It started off just as a party, a place to bring everyone who who touch music or film or fashion in a creative sense together. And that's how I came with culture creators, right? People who drive culture, who are really the ones who are the creators, not the celebrities, but the ones who are staying up late, giving up vacations, all kind of hours. Those people who go thankless on celebrity stages. And then it just kind of me just listening to community. And then also, I'm a Howard grad, so going to HBCUs and on stage, I'm on stage talking to students with influencers, and I'm like, okay, this is fine, but we need to get people to talk to young people in areas where I don't see diversity. We were doing DEI work before they actually came up with the term DEI, because I felt it was our responsibility as people of color in spaces where it's very difficult to get in and it's very difficult to navigate, to create our own kind of pipeline to make sure that there's the next Joy Brown who's going to succeed me. And so that became the breadth of our commitment to young people in HBCUs and making sure that we're helping the entertainment build a pipeline and creating access to young talent and creating spaces for them too.
I love how both of you guys at the foundation talked about creating possibility and space for other people. You guys were diving into these ideas you really didn't even know, like the end result of how it's going to be, but you knew that it could become something just because your audience and your community was asking for it. And I love the bravery that it takes to actually build something because it's scary. Like you don't know if it's going to work, you don't know if people are going to show up. But at the end of the day, you guys focused on the need, the vision, what people were desiring, and you saw how you could support them. Now, let's dive into brands because brands are, it's no secret, leaning into the idea of culture and community. And they're doing it mostly, it feels unauthentic. They're doing it to stay more relevant. And I get it. You want to make sales, you want to pass all the awards. I completely understand that point of view, but sometimes it can often feel performative and it can definitely lack authenticity. And that leaves us feeling more disconnected, which is back to the original point. Community isn't supposed to make us feel more distant, it's supposed to bring us together. And with that, in a world where community often just looks good online, for the audience who are wondering like how can I find my space that feels like me, but how do I avoid joining communities for the aesthetics or the status and instead just choose spaces that actually align with who I am and the values that I identify with?
Yeah, I think um, for me, I mean, this isn't the most practical answer, or part of this isn't the most practical answer, but it's a feeling, right? Like I always tell people to try something once, you know, And it's a feeling you get when you walk in the door. Like for me, looking for a church, choir is great, preaching is great. I know that this is my place, you know? But also, I think practically to think about your intentions and the things that you desire from a space. You know, is it to be in a room with people who work in the same industry? Is it to be in a room with the people who are, you know, more tenured and have more experience? You know, I think thinking about and writing this, like writing down a list, putting pen to paper really helps you go through the motions of figuring out if something is right for you. So if you are really questioning, is this community right for me? Is this space right for me? I think it's really thinking about your intentions and the things you desire and putting pen to paper and seeing if those things show up in that space.
I second that about, I think it's instinctual. I think we have to trust ourselves, and also to be risk takers. I will say I've built community and found support in some unlikely spaces. And it's been actually with sometimes some people who don't look like me, or we don't even share the same background. And it's been one of the most rewarding surprises that I've had. So I think that we have to be open. I think that's really important. Not everything is going to smell like we want to smell, look like it wants, to look and feel like we want to feel. And I think that you have to open yourself up to possibility. And it's okay if you get in a community and find out, hey, this is not for me. I think we have to be more courageous and be risk takers and get ourselves more out there to explore more and be open to what comes our way or where we find ourselves. And you'd be surprised, like some places or some groups that you can join, you may not have ever thought you would ever be there before, and it can spark creativity, can spark imagination, it can spark new opportunities.
And
I love,
oh, sorry. I was gonna say you brought up brands too, and as someone
Yeah,
who kind
talk
of,
about that.
yeah, someone who like brings people into a room and sometimes has to, you know, forge relationships with brands to facilitate production, whatever it may be. That's something I also think about, you know, are our intentions aligned? What do they want from the community and what can the community get from them? And being that liaison between the two and making sure that, you know, both are happy.
Yeah, I think and I would say, my job was brands for a long
Mhm.
time. And so I navigated both worlds. I had to be able to communicate to the brand what the artist want, right? And make it fit for what the brand was looking for. Because it's a marriage, right? It's two people getting something out of it. And I always tell artists, like, to think of dealing with brands that way. You're not just taking a check. It's, what are they getting back in return? And when you talk about culture and brand, one thing I want to educate us on in the brand world, right, is that if they're not after culture, they can't say black, they can't say brown, right? They can't say these hot words that are all DI triggers, right? So culture becomes now the word. And while it's never gone away, I think because of all the limitations around what we're going through, it's become an even harder word. And Imani's a friend of mine, like someone who has culture in the title of their IP, it becomes challenging when companies trample over it. I think what's really important for us to remember is that when you see brands make mistakes, um, and you see companies make mistakes, it's because there hasn't been checks and balances in place to make sure that the brand is showing up in a space that's authentic, and the way they're communicating their message is authentic.
Mhm. Mhm.
And I won't bring up what we saw happened a couple months ago, months back, where it was a big hoorah, right, in our community about this brand and what have you. But that, to me, it could have been addressed very early on if the strategy around how the brand shows up and how it's communicated to our audience was done very early on.
Yeah.
I love that you guys both spoke to this idea about creating the spaces that you are looking for, but then also remembering at the end of the day, this community is a diverse aspect, right? It's complicated. Some things really make sense, some things don't. And in order for a lot of these communities to grow, you have to work with people who unfortunately do not look like you. And just like Joy said, you have to be open. And there's a power in that openness because a lot of those people are connected to other people who can furthermore support the vision. But like you said, Michael, having that sense of alignment is essential.
Yeah.
Because once you build this community, community is built on trust. And
Yeah.
anybody knows, like, once you lose that trust, it's really hard to get it back. Because once we put our money behind you, we'd start telling our family, our friends behind you, you are a part of our family. And we don't want to feel like our family betrayed us,
Yeah.
right? So even with that, what people forget is that community is about reciprocity. And a lot of the times, people immediately associate it with only being poured into, but never realizing that's important to pour into others. So, what is, to both of you guys' point, healthy reciprocity in community actually look like? And how can we learn how to contribute without it feeling transactional or even exhausting? Because it is exhausting sometimes to constantly show up.
I was having this conversation about that recently because right now, I think that's what's really, really important for our community is to how do we show up for one another? How do we have, and I don't want to say this, and all relationships aren't reciprocal, right? Sometimes there are relationships where you do more pouring, and there's some relationships where you do more taking. And so I think we have to like balance that out to understand that not everybody's going to give us something because we gave them something. I want to take that away, one. Secondly, in order for especially Black and Brown businesses to continue to flourish, for seen and heard to continue doing its business, and culture con and culture creators to be in these spaces and to create these communities for people to excel and have access, we need your support. We need people when there's a ticket, buy a ticket. People will spend all this money on fly and do Coachella, but when CultureCon puts up a VIP ticket or Culture K puts a VIP ticket, they're balking about the ticket price. So I think we have to really call a spade and say, what does support really look like? Support looks like, making sure that we are putting investing our dollars to make sure that these companies and these founders stay supported and succeed. Volunteering is an easy way to do it. I love my young people. They're like, hey, I love what you're doing. I have an idea. Can I do it? I'm like, hey, come on, and I think that also builds community. Volunteer where you can and help them out. If you have an idea, because that idea that you have could be the launch of a new career for you. You just never know how things kind of unravel and unfold. And also, let's share the good news. If I know a good deal about what's happening, if I now I know about Seaman Hard, so now I can talk to my writer and my actor friends in LA. Hey, do you guys know Michael? That's the power that we have, that naturally to be able to network. And it's not always networking up. I think people make so much mistake about, oh, I got to talk to such and such. Your peer group is so much more, to me, much more powerful because they know what's going on. They live it, they breathe it, all the things. We should be networking amongst each other, amongst our peer group, because that's where opportunity really lies.
Yeah. Everything Joy said, I echo. I think you said everything that I was gonna say. So yeah, totally agree.
Sorry about that,
Volunteering
Mike.
is a big one. Volunteering is a big one though that I've also like been a volunteer, and what that has helped me with is this is what I'm skilled at. This is where what my talent is. I haven't had the opportunity to really utilize that talent in a lot of different spaces, but hey, let me try it here. And it just gives you an opportunity to gain experience. And you never know like what that can lead to in that room, in that moment. With Seen and Heard, we have every time we do an event, I always get text or email like, hey, what can I do to help? I know how to do this, I know how to do that. And I think it's one of the, especially when a community is first starting up, um, it's one of the biggest ways to support for sure.
And can I add one other thing?
Yeah.
Now when the job market is super competitive and like there are not that many opportunities for internships and stuff like that, and even if you're a young professional, if you want to level up, there's nothing that beats experience to layer up your resume. So volunteering is the easiest way to get experience, and put that on your resume and build.
And I'll even copy that by saying volunteering is a good way for you to understand what it really takes to build communities, period. I think we're going to touch on this in the next question. I feel as though we're very easily um, accessible to criticize, but not understand what does it really actually take. And until you volunteer, until you're on the inside of the production, into the outreach, into pulling things together, that will show you, hey, like maybe I can give a little bit more grace, or even more so, how can I share as like a focus group per se to kind of say like, hey, here's what we're actually looking for. I know you guys thought this was this, but like maybe you missed the mark a little bit, but how are the people who are quote unquote community builders supposed to really understand how to continue to show up? Because it's tough to keep showing up and then maybe you receive some backlash. And that's what a lot of people are scared of. And Joy, you mentioned like what does support really look like? I love how you spoke about buying the ticket. I think people underestimate the value of putting your money where your mouth is. You have to show up. It's the only way that this ecosystem can continue to exist by us showing up. We need to be in the rooms because the brands are watching, the sponsorships are watching, other people who want to do the exact same things that both of you guys do are watching. And the only way that we can continue to create this essence of like possibility is just to keep showing up. And I love that you guys both touched on that. So, with the increase of visibility comes a lot of outside interest in partnerships, just to go back, and it comes with attention. So, how do you actually protect the community as itself without it becoming clout driven so that you guys can move away from it being a popularity contest and then get back to purpose? What's your North Star?
Something that we always used to say with CultureCon and the Creative Collective, because we started in the living room, we always, anytime we were maybe entering a new level of what we've already done before, or we were entering just a different space, we always had to ask ourselves, does this feel like the living room? Are we still, dreaming? Do we still have the intentions? Yes, the space and the scale is bigger, but remembering why we started. And I think even with Seen and Heard now, we're going into our second year of serving and creating. But and it's so that's still fresh on our minds, but it's always, are we still serving this purpose that we started with? Now that purpose evolves, right? As communities get bigger, as resources get better, but I think always remembering that initial intention. And no matter where you scale, no matter where you go, making sure it aligns in some way.
Yeah. I like to call that don't forget your why, like why you started it, you know. That keeps me grounded. And it's one of the deciding factors in terms of what I take on and what I don't take on. Like if it doesn't align with our why, what's our purpose and why we're here and who we serve, then it kind of it doesn't make sense for us to get involved or to go down that route.
I appreciate that, guys. I really love to get other people's point of view without it seeming as if everyone's just agreeing to all opportunities. I love that you guys just come right back to the living room, like Michael said, or making sure that it aligns with you and your vision. And I'm happy you spoke about like how it continues to evolve because sometimes we get a little bit stuck. And that's going to be really impactful for people who want to have permission or are looking for permission to take the next step in the evolution of the community that they're building or the community that they want to be a part of vice versa. So I want to touch on this before we get to the audience questions. We've witnessed audience backlash from CultureCon to Afrotech to even Essence, and they're all Black spaces that were created to support us. Many people can launch a community, but sustaining it is where people most times fall off. What has allowed each of you to maintain longevity, trust, and relevance in your communities? And how do we invite our audience to help us strengthen these spaces by sharing meaningful but also constructive feedback?
I'll start. I would say honestly, I'm here by the grace of God. And I don't you I mean, I would tell you this last 2 years has been the most challenging and difficult years of business. And I can speak for Imani because I talked to her, and what I did was I called other founders to see. I was like, hey, I'm going through this. Are you going? And they're like, oh yeah, we're all feeling it. And it made me realize that one, I'm not on an island by myself, but that we're all kind of in this weird position of trying to scale businesses with limited resources, and then a community that's impacted by the economy and what's happening in the world. So it's a very challenging time for anyone who is attempting to build community. So one, I want to say that because I think that you all have to give us grace because of those challenges, because all these great things that are available to you come with a cost, and no one is born with a silver spoon, or at least I'm not, with wealth of money to make all these opportunities free for us, right? And so everything comes with supporting the people behind the scenes who are building all these opportunities, and it takes, when you run a business, there are costs that come with running a business. And so sometimes we're human, we're going to get it, we're going to hit the nail on the head, and it's going to be fantastic. And then sometimes we may miss a beat, and I think it's important to understand that we're human in that, right? And that we're doing our best to serve you. And I think constructive criticism to me is a gift, right? Feedback to me is always a gift, because how do you know if you're getting it right, or how do you know how to improve if you're not giving feedback? But I want to temper that feedback with understanding the complexity of building these type of community driven organizations, that they are, it's a very challenging time.
Yeah. And with that, like Culture Con, Creative Collective, Seen and Heard, the layout, all these things. I'll speak to Culture Con and Creative Collective. There wasn't a blueprint to building that for us, right? You build as you go. We're learning as we go. All these communities that we're building now as Black people in America in 2025, there was no blueprint
Mm-mm.
before. So I think grace is the biggest thing to have, as a member of the community, but as someone who wants to build community, grace for yourself.
Mhm.
Knowing that you're not going to have every answer, knowing that you are the first person doing this specific thing, in this specific way. I think that's something to really remember and give yourself grace for. It's not easy. Building community is you're serving people. And in the world we live in today, one, people aren't always going to be happy. And two, everyone has a platform, i.e., social media. So understanding those two things as you go in and not letting that scare you or hold you back from, the purpose that you have, is something to think about too. Because, yeah, it's really interesting seeing commentary about, the Afro-text, the culture cons, all the things online. Sometimes it's disheartening because it's like all these people behind the scenes really work hard to create this space. Um, some of that is great feedback. Um, but yeah, I think, as a founder of a community or a creator of a community, to have grace for yourself, and know that you're not gonna have everything right. You're not always gonna get it right. Um, but the gift is trying and learning and doing it again.
Yeah. And also too, like hitting on the grace part, when we talk about community sentiment on social media. mean, we're not here to tell people how to feel, right? People are entitled to how they feel they were treated, or what their experience um, is. Um, but what I tempered to say that when you put yourself in those shoes, right? We know, even in our friend groups, if we're honest, not everybody's gonna want to do what we want to do. Everybody ain't gonna be happy. We can't service every single person, their likes and dislikes. So you're gonna have some disgruntled people, and that's just the nature of life, right? We're gonna have some people who gonna hate because they're gonna hate. Um, but if you care, and we're talking about how do we show up in community and support, then you find constructive ways to give feedback. There's a way to give feedback that doesn't, cut the legs off for someone, and there's feedback that you can give that's with love and kindness and gentleness. So I think as a founder, I would say to those who are listening, like, think about that when you give your feedback. What's your intent behind this feedback? Because the worst thing that happen is these things go away. Then what, right? So we need these spaces for creators, for culture, for movie screenwriters. We need these spaces. And so if you want these spaces to continue to exist, then let's figure out how to help them.
Yeah. Yeah. Emails are great too.
Hmm. And I'll share a real quick story, and I'll make it short. I had a not so great year. One year, my award show went really long. And when I'd say I was so embarrassed, and as a founder, I knew I knew what their experience was like. So I owned it. I got ahead of it. I said, listen, I apologize. This was a lesson still. And then I told them, I just told the truth. And I think by me being a founder and saying, okay, I recognize that, the level of excellence that you're accustomed to receiving from me, you didn't get it because of extenuating circumstances, but I'm asking for your grace, and, these are things that happen. I think, and that's a way to kind of also bring your community along the journey to say, hey, I'm putting this, like you said, Mike, I'm putting this plane together and flying at the same time. So sometimes we're gonna dip below, and you're gonna need to put in your seatbelt and your oxygen mask, right? It's not always gonna be smooth, right? But I'm gonna try my best so that you can, have your snacks and eat your food.
Yeah. Yeah. That's a good analogy or metaphor.
I love that, guys. This was a beautiful conversation, and I love how we got a chance to blend both the community seekers as well as the community builders. But I don't want to stop there. We have some amazing questions that the attendees actually sent over prior that I want to make sure that we can get to so they feel supported. And we also have a few in the Q&A box. So, how do we balance relationships with people that are both in their personal and their professional life, either a friend and a colleague?
That's been my whole existence. I mean, I don't think you can create community. Not, it's not impossible. For me personally, I'll speak for myself. It's hard for me to create community with people that I'm not in community with. And from Culture Con to Seen and Heard, everyone that I've worked with has been a friend, is still a friend. And I think the biggest lesson I learned with working with your friends is communication. It's being upfront and honest about everything from money to goals to vision to intention. And that just helps. It's something to learn along the way, and how to communicate. How do you communicate professionally with a friend? How do you separate that, with life and work? With friends now that I work with, and even, working with Imani in the past, we always are like, do you have the capacity for work right now? If we're off the clock, if we're, it's a Saturday or a Sunday, we always just set boundaries around work and our personal lives to maintain, because the most important thing is our personal relationship and making sure that we protect that at all costs. So boundaries and communication are the biggest tools that I've used to maintain those two sides.
I love that, Joy.
I would say the same. I wouldn't treat my friend any different when I'm doing business with them than I would someone who I wasn't a friend with. I would give them the same respect. And I think in that respect comes the boundary. We're talking business, and I'm going to treat you as such, and not treat that relationship casually. And then when we're off the clock, we're off the clock. And I think the key to maintaining is making sure that there are no bumps in the road. Like you said, Michael, is communication.
Yeah. When you're able to work with your friends, it's the best gift ever. It's literally the best thing
It
ever.
is. It
It's such
is.
a blessing.
I love that, guys.
Yeah.
So, connection can be a little bit cringy, someone said. They said, can they have some tips on where to find young professionals and the best way to not only reach out to someone, but also how to connect with them?
hmm Yeah, I mean, I think it's dependent on where you are specifically, whether you're in New York, LA, Florida, Atlanta. Um, for me, as an actor, right? When I'm in New York, I go to the theater. I find events and moments around the thing that I love. And in those spaces, one thing I know is there are going to be other like-minded people because it's the thing we love. So I think thinking about your hobbies, your profession, the things you like, and going to spaces that are facilitating those things is one place to start to meet people like you. Yeah, finding one thing that you like, and finding a space that is facilitating that is a way to do that. Um, that's without being specific to a city, that's kind of the way I approach it. I would approach it.
For I would My suggestion would be is to kind of invest in yourself. So if you, let's say you are into marketing, right? So there, you know, there's plethora of information online, sign up and go to something, go to a workshop or a chat. I mean, I am a fun fact about me is I'm addicted to AI. And I say addicted because I think I have played with almost if it pops up, I'm gonna try to figure out how to use it or what it is, right? So I love AI. And so I am curious about it. So I just started signing up for classes. And in doing so, I've met other people who are just as super geeky about it as I am. And just now have a whole separate community around AI, right? So I think it's just, again, going back to being open and putting yourself in places where uh you may not know anyone, but you share a common thread of what your interests are, and just, try it.
Yeah. And to your point, Joy, every industry has some kind of conference.
Yeah.
There are tech conferences, there are film festivals, which are essentially conferences for the film industry. There are music conference. There's every type of conference you can think of.
And if
So,
there are conferences, there are, workshops or
right.
list parties or those things like, Eventbrite, event
Summits. Yeah,
something, like Event Noir. I see them everywhere. So if I see them everywhere, I know
they exist.
find them easily.
Yeah, but it does start with you. It starts with you figuring out, okay, what is the thing that I love, or what is the thing that I'm curious about, or what is the thing that I want to know more about, and finding those spaces that are making those things happen.
And I'll share my two bit too. You'd be very surprised if you DM someone, they they will talk back. And I've DM'd tons of people like, "Hey, love your shoes, love what you're doing. How can I help?" All the things, whether it's like, reciprocity or not. And I've actually made amazing relationships on LinkedIn, on Instagram, and it's because I did it scared. I did it feeling awkward. I wasn't trying to be something that I wasn't. I just was very specific about my ask, like, how do you do this? Maybe we should hang out. And at first, yeah, it's weird, and not everybody is safe. I'm not saying that everyone's safe, but I'm saying be very mindful of your judgment, but don't be afraid to put yourself out there. The online access to someone is free. And I know a lot of things they talked about, the conferences and so forth. They have free ones and they have paid ones, but there's opportunity out there. I do see tons of it as well, and I share it all the time. So they do have community that you can build on and offline.
Yeah.
Okay, just two more. How do you share your story in a way that builds community authentically without feeling like you're exposing too much of your past? And also, what's the line between being honest and authentic and not oversharing?
hmm Um, Second part of that question, I think,
I like the
especially with,
second parts, Michael.
yeah, I know. I'm like, let me start with the second part. Uh, I think with social media specifically, I always think of like sharing in buckets. There are specific parts of my life that I'm never gonna share who I'm dating, right? Like call me Issa Rae. You'll see me and my wife when we get married online, maybe, but I will share like things about a play I'm in or a movie that I have coming out or an event that we have coming up or something I find funny. I think it's thinking about what are the parts of your life that you feel comfortable around sharing. And once you start to like bucket those subjects of your life, it becomes easier to think of like what you will share on social media. Um, there's such thing as oversharing for sure. It's discernment as well. I think everybody's oversharing meter is different, you know. I'm in some friends, close friends, and all they share is food. And I'm like, this is a secret. Cool, sure. If that's your oversharing meter, cool. So I think it's, case by case, it's your discernment. But I do think sometimes social media can be overwhelming and, we feel like as creatives, we have to share some of our lives so we can, feel authentic and we can connect with others. So what I do is I'm like, okay, these are the things that I feel comfortable sharing, and I don't have to think too hard about that once I figured out what those buckets are.
And I'm going to ask you to repeat the first part of your question because I got wrapped up in his answer and I forgot.
No worries. How do you share your story in a way that builds community authentically without feeling like you're exposing too much of your past?
Okay, well, I'm gonna be honest and say that I don't think I've done a great job of telling my story online.
Mm,
That's what my team tells me. I'm so used to being behind the scenes and driving stuff that I have not been forward facing and say, hey, this is why I started and blah blah, blah, unless I do these type of interviews. So I'm trying to figure out how to do that in a way that's authentically me, because I think that's been quite the challenge is one agreeing that I gotta tell the story, but two, how do I do it in a way that really feels like me? So I'm trying to sort that out, guys. So if you see something come up, you see I'm trying to sort it out. um and then the whole process of oversharing, I think, for me, I have different layers, right? So by my heart is I'm a writer, right? So for my personal stuff, like I have a Substack. And for a long time I didn't tell nobody because I just want to be able to talk about what I want to talk about, right? All kind of things. I'm all over the place, right? And my publicist, she was like, no, don't do this. And I was like, you know what? Yes, I am going to do it. But you know why? Because I'm still human. And at the end of the day, my heart breaks. I get mad at the world, and that's to me in a way to share community because in Substack, I found community around the little weird things that, tick me off or make me happy, So that's a bucket. I'm not so much on Instagram anymore because I just eh, I don't know, just I haven't felt motivated for it. But I think you have to do, like Michael said, I think you have to do what's right for you. Um, I would say about oversharing, this has always been my rule of thumb. If you share something and you get backlash about it and you get upset, possibly you overshared. So if you don't want to hear someone's comment, negative or positive about what you're doing or what you got on or who you're dating, then don't share it. Like I think that we have to think about how you're opening yourself up to the world and let that be the metric by which you decide how much you share and what you don't share.
Hmm.
I love those both perspectives. All right, last question. Give us 30 seconds or less. So, based on you and your position as community builders, how can you build a community that goes beyond coffee chats? And how do you keep up with that? How do you maintain that connection? Do you guys offer office hours, a weekly newsletter update? How do you stay connected to your audience without it feeling overwhelming?
We have a newsletter and we try not to bang people in the head about it because I hate when people send me a bunch of newsletters. So we have a bi-monthly newsletter that goes out. We do in-person events and networking. We also do virtual events. And I like to say that I'm pretty accessible. Like it's not often that I don't answer someone's email. I might not answer right away, but I've always been open to meeting new people and hearing what they have to say. And I just jumped on a line last week. Someone DM'd me and said, "Hey, I want to volunteer for you." And I was like, "Okay, let's get on a Zoom." And because you just never know, right? That's how I feel like you just never know. And so those are kind of the ways that I just kind of make myself available because I really believe that having access to someone is game changing.
Yeah. Yeah. I'm similar in the same way, like online, digitally, through our emails, through our newsletter, on social, on Instagram specifically, we make it a point to engage as much as we can, as much as time allows with folks, whether it's in DMs or in the comment section. But in person is kind of where the magic of connection really happens. And we try to program all of our events differently. We have different, like tonight, for instance, we're going to the Geffen Theater to watch Gail Bean, Biko Eisenberg, and Michael Rashan in a new play called Table 17. So we're taking a bunch of people from the community to do that. So we find ways to bring people into the room, and connect with them in real life too. So
The room where it happens.
exactly. Shout out to Hamilton.
Yeah, and Outkast just said that too. Andre 3000 said, "Great things happen in small
Small
rooms."
rooms. Yes, I love that
I,
quote. Love
Me
yeah,
that
too.
quote.
I'm
Yeah.
such a small room person. I
Same.
thrive in small rooms. Like you give me a
Same.
big room, I might just be wallpaper.
Yeah.
Me too. I
Yeah.
love that, guys. Well, thank you so much to our panelists, Joy and Michael. This conversation was incredibly insightful and impactful. And I personally want to say thank you guys so much for your part in the community as well as the culture. And I can't wait for people to take this valuable information and insight they learned from you guys and to apply it to not only their real life, but to also teach others, because that's what this information is about. It's not about just honing it for yourself, but to show others another aspect of what you have learned. If you can, before you go to and head backstage, please share with our audience how they can keep in contact with you, whether that's Instagram or maybe even your website.
My webs Keep in touch with culture creators and sign up for our newsletter. That's how you get access to our events. It's culturecreators.com. And we are on Instagram at the culture creators and TikTok at culture creators. We're also on LinkedIn and Handshake. And then you can reach out to me on LinkedIn. I don't check it that often. But you can always DM us, and my email is joy, at culturecreators.com.
Yeah. And for us, we're very active on Instagram. So you can follow us on Instagram at scene, like movie scene, SCENE dot heard. Um, scene dot heard, like movie scene. Uh, our website, you can sign up for our newsletter there. Actually, if you go to our Instagram, everything is in our bio. So you can just hit that link in the bio. You can sign up for newsletters, see when events are coming up. DM us. My personal Instagram is Michael, my first and last name with an underscore at the end. Um, Email Michael at seenandheard.co.com. And yeah, so many ways to connect. And if you're in LA or New York, come to one of our events.
Beautiful. Well, thank you so much, guys. I'll see you guys backstage. And great job.
Thank you. Thank you.